Next up, we have a panel on yield-bearing stablecoins on L2s, balancing efficiency with potential risks, with our moderator, Ivan from Aragon. We have Richard from International Stable Currency. We have Julian from Karpatkey. We have Pablo from Qidao and James Ross from Mode.
Perfect. Thanks everyone for showing up. Let's start with the basics. Just an intro from all of you guys. James, you can kick it off.
Hello, I'm James, founder of Mode. Mode is a DeFi-focused L2 building on Optimism Superchain.
I'm Pablo the Penguin, and I'm founder of Qidao, a stablecoin CDP that we've been running for about 4 years, and launched on the many L2s, so kind of know the game pretty well.
Hey all, I'm Julian, working Karpatkey as Treasury Manager. I manage Gnosis Treasury, and also working in ecosystem development for Gnosis Chain.
Hi, my name is Richard. I am a co-founder at ISC. It's a asset-pegged stable currency.
Also, we have a Solana ecosystem representative.
You busted me.
It's important.
Is there stablecoins in Solana?
Yeah, there's a few. There's a few.
We got PayPal USD.
That we need the stablecoin to buy those meme coins, right?
Fair.
Hey everyone, I'm Ivan. I spend a lot of time during the day working with Julie in Karpatkey, and I advise Aragon on everything VE and Gauge related. So, you know, Richard, I'm not picking on you, okay? But
that's all right. I can survive.
Are yield embedded stablecoins a fad of this cycle, or are they here to stay?
No, I think the T-bill might. The T-bill stablecoin might, because if the T-bill goes back to zero, it's like, why would you hold that? But I do think the future is non-USD stablecoin. The reason is inflation is only going to get worse over time. Like that's the only way. That's the only soft way out of the debt problem that we're facing. There's others like way out, but I don't even want to live in that world. So yeah, I do think like we're gonna start to come up with better currency that are not fiat pegged. That's what ISC is. I think Reserve Protocol actually came up with the concept. They built a protocol to build this kind of currency. I do think it's going to become more and more popular, and as the T-bill yield goes down, more and more people will realize like, oh, can we do something else than T-bill? Yeah, and then also people will move away from the US dollar, I think.
So it's basically the RWA Trojan horse sort of situation a bit?
Yeah, I think so, especially as we're able to accept more and more currency like seamlessly. Like on Solana, the nice thing that we have is Jupyter. Everything routes through this. We have the code on other chain, 1inch, but not everybody uses it, so that kind of becomes like the mode for Uniswap and so on is so strong that even if you launch like Curve, then like you need to attract your own customer. But thanks to an aggregator like Jupyter and maybe other aggregator that are going to come up, anyone can launch a USD stablecoin. It's just going to route to whatever the person receiving the payments wants. So you can have a merchant that wants to receive USDT, and you're using USDS or ISC or anything really, because it can all be swapped live at payment.
So here centralization makes it easier.
yeah, sure.
Well, I mean, we're just putting a straw man there because we still got 1inch, which a lot of CowSwap. We got Kyber aggregator. Like there's plenty of options. There's OpenOcean on a lot of the different L2s. So I think in terms of game field, you got all these opportunities.
But do most people trade on those aggregator, or they still trade on Uniswap
the aggregators
directly?
are integrated in most of the...
No, integrated is fine. It's like the issue is that...
No, what I mean integrated, front-end integrated. Like you go into Linea and Linex, and the trade is routed through OpenOcean rather than the just the LPs within the protocol.
So if someone goes on Uniswap website, does it get routed to other DEX? No, right?
Yeah, actually...
It does? Oh,
well,
okay,
they have Uniswap X, right?
Yeah. Do people use that?
Yeah, I mean that's the default mode. Yeah.
Got it. Sorry.
I would just
I'm
update a little
learning.
bit.
Realignment.
Yeah.
No, but
also,
that's
like,
great actually, because then it empowers what I'm saying. So that's totally fine.
Good to empower you. Yes.
Huh?
Good to
Yeah.
feel empowered.
Awesome. James, like, is it, we have Gnosis, we have Blast, with like embedded yield. Is this becoming a must for a L2 to be competitive, to have this sort of like embedded yield assets?
So I think Blast and other like embedded yield chains, I think there's like trade-offs, right? So for sure, it's like pretty good UX to just bridge and you have yield on like the base asset you bridge. So if it's ETH or a USD stablecoin, it's nice. And yeah, there's obviously like a lot of trade-offs that come with that. So if you look at Blast, they've done a lot of work to like essentially enable the rebasing at the sequencer level. That's pretty complex. It's not just a standard OP stack that's like well trusted. So, some LPs might be less likely to want to bridge to Blast versus like a standard OP stack chain. And you also kind of have less asset flexibility. So with Mode, we decided to not have embedded yield and instead let users choose when they're on Mode from the variety of assets that are there. So they could choose SUSDE, they could choose SDI, which is now SUSDS. And yeah, there's flexibility for the user. This kind of works a little bit better when it comes to bridging as well. It's easier to bridge off those assets. For a long time, people felt kind of trapped on Blast because they didn't have third-party bridges to bridge off. So yeah, there's definitely trade-offs. I think for us, like the main plus of going this route is when we speak to like larger LPs, they're pretty confident in our security model because it's the standard like OP stack configuration. And yeah, that's kind of the main thing. But I think we'll see a number of like kind of more innovative solutions appear, innovative chains, but it's also very competitive right now. So unless you can bring like a significant amount of yield to a chain that launches, you're going to have a hard time, I think, competing with what's already there.
You look like you have a response.
I have quite a few things to say. I mean, for starters, like I like what Mode is doing, but I think you're putting yourself in a corner by saying we take the OP stack because, well, then from a user perspective, I can just go to Velodrome or Optimism and do things there. But then from my perspective, I think that most L2s should be treating Ethereum as their playground, as they should be seen as Ethereum whales and access the most native yield you can get. So for example, if you're doing DAI, you get into SDAI. If you're doing USDC, well, you don't. And kind of apply that to all subsets of the application so that the protocols that integrate, you don't necessarily start deciding, well, today I'm picking DAI, tomorrow I'm picking USDC, then I'm picking Axelar USDC, because you end up with the same issue that we had in Solana like a few years ago where there's 20 versions of USDC bridged from like 20 different chains, and then nothing worked, so they had to go kind of shake up and change things. But especially for smaller L2s that are not billion-dollar sized, that don't have huge market caps and integrations with exchanges, taking that yield that you can make, not necessarily rebasing it to the user, but providing liquidity mining incentives. Like even with SDAI, you're making 5%. That's $50K a year. That's sizable for a bribing market.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for new L2s, they need to focus on like 1 or 2 yield-bearing stables and try and nail them for us, and then look at like the combination of applications and the differentiated strategies you can have on your L2, right? And the yield that can come from that, and the risk-adjusted yield. So for us, we're focused now very much on Velodrome's launch engages. So we have Athena's SUSDE, which we're going to incentivize heavily to build up that stablecoin. The yield is pretty high right now. It's getting a lot of hype. So that's like a core strategy for us to try and build up liquidity around that asset. But yeah, I agree, like us initially having a number of assets, like 8 different yield-bearing stablecoins, meant like there's a lot of liquidity fragmentation. So you can't get liquidity onto the chain in size, right? Unless people bridge it on. So that's definitely something to think about.
Yeah, the other side is, as you're acting like a whale, you can go to protocols and say, we have enough liquidity, you can give us better deals, you can give us a cut of the profits, and you're able to build more sustainably for an L2 rather than just showering LPs with the rewards directly.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, we got into the liquidity fragmentation thing. Is there like, aside from the, potentially better UI, are there like risk vectors to that as a like does liquidity fragmentation just fuck up UI, or does it create also risk vulnerabilities for the users and the protocols? What are your thoughts, guys?
I think one of the main security issues that I can find is that you end up trusting bridges, and the more bridges you have to trust, of course, you're incurring more risks. There have been a lot of bridge hacks for the past few years, and I don't see why that has to stop. So I'd rather have like native versions of the asset than have to rely on bridges.
Intent bridges kind of solves for the security. And intent-based bridge, where the user just put intent and it's fulfilled. That kind of like zero TVL bridge. That kind of remove the risk from the user, no?
Yeah, I mean, sure, when you have the native stablecoins, yes. But like, if the assets are rich,
Pablo, you guys are deployed across a lot of networks. How's that? Like, what are some of the unique challenges? Is bridging a problem?
I mean, it was always a problem. When we first started, we did like a bridge contract that would bridge for the user, directly with the user. So we would wrap all the bridge tokens so we could unbridge, basically undo the bridging transaction through the mint and burn bridges, and effectively get the messages across, but we still controlled which bridges would relay the message, which enabled us to be safer when multi-chain disappeared, and other bridges like relay chain, like we've been able to onboard and offboard different ones. But the best metaphor to look at these systems is inter-exchange fees. Like if somebody's trying to pay a vendor in Africa and like they need to go through a specific vendor or pay through Wise, and there's the route. The route is what's gonna be the fee to use your stablecoin. So if you think about it as your end user, you want to make sure that the fees are low for the majority of them, and you gotta incentivize that so that you can maintain low fees. Whether like you got a lot of PayPal users, maybe interconnect some liquidity for PYUSD or Base. We've been really hammering down on our Base strategy just because a lot of usage, a lot of tokens, it's able to attract a lot of users. We're also kind of working on mode at the moment, launching with our Velo plans. But yeah, like at the end of the day, metaphor is the inter-exchange fees for your stablecoin, because you can have the best liquidity, or I don't know, CRV USD, but if you don't have liquidity for users to transfer, it's useless.
Julian, Gnosis is the OG of native yield. I mean, it's unique in like choosing a stablecoin as the base token, and then the SDAI. Can you share with us some of the learnings from that, and like what would you do different if you have to think through this today?
Yeah, so I think like what we did at Gnosis was a long time ago, not even Gnosis, right? XDAI initially started having DAI as the native asset. When Maker raised the DSR, it was a no-brainer for us to deposit the bridge funds there, because it were like no risk attached to it, no additional risk. If you're already holding DAI, depositing an SDAI is a no-brainer. But now we are facing an issue, which is that Maker is migrating to USDS, and yeah, they said that they would maintain the yield for 1 year, but they are already like widening the spread between SDAI and SUSDS. So now we are facing an issue if we should migrate or not. And it has some technical complexities. We're gonna need to upgrade the bridge, and we're gonna need to let the users choose if they want to do that or not. It's not just the DAO, right? It's user funds, and well, it's the same entity issuing the two tokens. It's already the same, right? Because USDS is upgradable. So, anyways, I could say that the number one thing is to have some more flexibility to be able to migrate if we have to. Maybe creating some sort of basket that allows that for that flexibility. And yeah, and secondly, something that I think it's quite important is never sacrifice on the risk, right? Like put users first, because users onboarded on DAI, not on USDS or other coins. So take that into consideration.
I think you should. Yeah, I think you guys should, like, because if USDS dies, same way for Maker. I think they're hand in hand right now. They're conjoined twins. But again, yeah, people will complain, and you shouldn't let a small, like, loud minority to stop you from improving your protocol and making the hard decisions that can help you survive.
I think like it's complex because we don't even know if USDS is gonna stick, right? Like we were just about last week if Maker should actually move forward with the rebranding or not.
The rebranding, but not necessarily the infrastructure. I think, of course, not making the decision immediately and like making sure it's good, but in the favor of giving users too many options, you might end up, getting beat by another L2 that decides to do the same playbook.
And we're not gonna give too many options to the users. Like I don't think we're gonna have both USDS and DAI. And they were certainly gonna take some time and see how things evolve before actually making a decision. That's gonna take quite some effort to implement.
Yeah.
So it seems like Julian and James are more on like give power to the users, and Pablo is more on like make the tough decisions. Richard, where do you think like this decision should always be opting for the user and for them alone, or should you as a network decide to like take advantage of better negotiating position and move forward?
No, I'm kind of aligned that if you give too many choice, the user will walk away with not knowing what choice to make, and therefore like basically leaving because it was too complicated. So I think being opinionated is generally better, and then it's your job to essentially figure out what's the right decision for, and that applies for I think any product, just not just stablecoin. You got to be opinionated and hope that you make the right decision for your user, and the user keep the flexibility that they can pick another product, and then you have to reevaluate from there, like why are user coming and why are they leaving, and then you readjust your decision based on that. If you give too many decisions, I think they'll leave.
I think it depends, right? Because in the case of DAI, it was like pretty clear that we had to deposit in SDAI. But it's not the same to deposit USDC sitting on the bridge in Aave, because you're clearly taking more risks. And you can say like, oh yeah, Aave is like secure or whatever. And what if there's a downfall, Aave takes bad debt, there's a hack or whatever. Like you are taking that decision on behalf of the users, and you cannot do that. Users were onboarded because it was USDC, vanilla USDC, not deposited in Aave. So it's different if you're clear from the beginning, right? Like if you create a new bridge and where the USDC is deposited in Aave, okay, users knew what they were doing, but you can just like YOLO the users' funds.
So that's a very important caveat, that you cannot essentially like take users' funds or shift users' funds based on like they made a decision assuming something, and then you just change that something and you just keep going. And that, I don't think that's correct. You need to allow user to essentially migrate more or less. Otherwise, I think it's immoral.
So I have a fun one. I don't advocate for this one, but what if a sequencer or bridge in L2 decides to take part, let's say 50% of their USDC, which could be like 500 million, and putting them on Coinbase and earning like 4%, kind of like what Maker did with the PSM?
So I think that would be okay if they give time for the user to like leave, essentially.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to do this in 2 months. You have 2 months to leave, and then there won't, like, to your competitor or whatever. I think that then it's okay. Like, you can move forward with a business decision that you need to do, and the user have the flexibility to leave. Yeah. But if you just do it like suddenly,
Of course, yeah.
Then you have to take the regulatory risk, right, of seizing the user funds, depositing in Coinbase, where you have to KYC. I don't think it's that simple of just like, okay, let's get 4%.
Right. But with the increased regulator uncertainty, now we have more certainty in regulatory actions, and we might be able to potentially pursue these strategies.
so all of those have like plus and minus. You just like you gotta try to pick the right sets of like advantage and disadvantage. But yeah, of course, regulatory uncertainty is like, we're crypto founder, like there's always regulatory uncertainty regardless of how far we go in decision. Like just making no decisions not really gonna actually protect us. So there's a gauge there, I think, and everyone has to, especially founders, need to navigate that.
So I mean, the example was like, okay, well, if you give people 2 months, but like, what happens with redemptions and liquidations if assuming like a CDP sort of design, like if the underlying asset and the stablecoin are living on different networks, like do you guys have thoughts around unique challenges related to that scenario?
I think it's about liquidity, right? Like ETH can be very liquid throughout different exchanges or chains, but if there's little liquidity in the layer 2, then you have to be more conservative setting up parameters.
Yeah, are you talking about like cross-chain lending particularly? Yeah, that one is crazy, because I don't know. Right now, I tried bridging from Metis, and anything over 10K, and I was getting 9K on Ethereum, which not good to bridge out of an L2 and losing 10% of your funds. Which then translates to, if there's a loan and someone wants to bridge into Metis to liquidate it and then bridge out, and they lose 10%, they're not going to do it. So then it opens up a huge existential risk for any protocols built like Aave, which have not fixed the bad debt liquidation issue, where if you liquidate further down than, say, 10%, it's just going to continue eating in your collateral until there's debt but no collateral. And yeah, big no good.
I think an example of it wasn't a depeg because Easy ETH wasn't pegged to ETH, but there was a drop in the price of Easy ETH, and Easy ETH was across like a number of L2s. I think there was like 100 million on Mode at the time, and all the L2s kind of reacted differently. Also, people had leveraged their positions on numerous lending protocols. It's probably integrated with like 20 different protocols across like 5 different L2s. And yeah, there was a different impact across all of them. And it was pretty bad on some. So yeah, again, it all came down to like the liquidity and the leverage being used in the system.
Mostly thanks to the fact that they picked Connext as their main bridge. So instead of you having to bridge into every L2, which means if you want to arb anything, you got to move out of the L2, which most of them 7 days, which again, not good. But you're withdrawing 7 days, and then you're getting your money, and then you can swap it out. So there's a lot of risk. They were able to take advantage of all this L2 liquidity thanks to taking the risk of using Connext as their main bridge.
Yeah, and I think Connext had the Connext bridge had a router, right? So like, as long as like there was liquidity in the router, there was, I don't know, 10-minute, 20-minute like withdrawals. Otherwise, it'd be like up to a day. But yeah, obviously, like there wasn't enough in the router to have these fast withdrawals, so that was a pretty big impact. But also comes down to like, people managing liquidity actively on your chain as well. So like rebalancing assets on the chain. So that's something L2s need to think about.
Yeah, the crazy one right now is like Linea, where you can just go on Dex Screener and look at the price, and it fluctuates a lot. You can buy USDC at 102 sometimes, and then in the morning it will be 98 cents. And so that needs to be fixed somehow, because Linea is kind of an isolated chain. It's not built into like Superchain or CKEVM chains, almost like Metis. So they're running into these issues where liquidity is not ample and it's not self-arbitraging. So there's probably a better solution for liquidity in these chains, particularly maybe not requiring arbitrage, maybe putting oracles within the LPs so that the prices can remain stable without needing an extra MEV layer or somebody swapping or an arbitrage bridge. And then you're talking about integrations and market makers and trying to get across, and it's a whole thing.
Yeah, I think also Blast saw a fluctuation in the price of USDB because it was more difficult to essentially run arbitrage strategies on that asset. So yeah, that's definitely something L2s need to think about, like the general market structure, and if like for some reason the price of USDT drops, like how quickly is that going to be arbitraged back? We were running some tests with like an on-chain agent, and it decided to swap USDC to USDT on like a really small pool that wasn't really used, and immediately lost like 20% because I don't know why it did that. But like usually that shouldn't happen, right? There should be an arbitrage bot running across that pool.
Julian, you got some alpha on managing liquidity on Gnosis chain?
Not really. Not much to add to what they said.
Okay. I mean, James, you mentioned like easy ETH being on like 20 different protocols across 5 different networks. So it like stablecoin space is crowded, LSD space is crowded, rollup space is crowded. How do you, from your specific vantage on like how do you pick partners that would be alive for the long run?
Sorry, can you just repeat the last part?
So sort of like how do you pick the winners? How do you pick a protocol to partner with that is not going to die in 6 months because founders vested and moved on or whatever?
I think you have to look at what users want, right? So initially when we launched Mode, we were focused on yield-bearing assets because that's what users wanted. Users wanted to leverage those assets, and they wanted to farm specifically like eigenlayer points at the time. So it's like, okay, we can help protocols building on Mode create like a good environment for that. And so we're really looking at like what do people want in the market, like what do our users demand, and what kind of strategies are they looking at, and what can we help provide them with for this. So I think the last few months saw people start to move to like yield-bearing stablecoins. So I think this is going to continue to be like a big trend. Like a lot of people are moving from holding ETH or BTC to yield-bearing stablecoins. Maybe that will change. I'm not sure. But I think for us, we look at things like you have the applications and you have the assets, and users are often looking for like an ideal combination of those two things. So it's like they might be holding USDT, and then like what application do they want to utilize the asset with?
I think that the rest could answer that question as well, because everyone would have a unique perspective. Like how do you pick winning partners in a crowded space?
I think on one side I agree, you let users choose. It's hard to predict what's going to happen in 5 years. Like I'm sure that with the regulatory change that we see in the US, we're going to see some TradFi sharks onboarding onto DeFi and bringing on their own solutions, and they might bring more liquidity, and they might end up winning. I do think that, I agree. yield-bearing stablecoins are here to stay, and users are gonna look for that, especially when it enables people from different parts of the world to access yield that otherwise they couldn't. And enabling easy access to that, for me, it's important.
Yeah, I guess there's kind of two types of decision. One that like you get to only pick one, kind of like which chain you go on, and the other is like which one do you partner with, because you can partner with multiple protocols, for example. So how do you, the way we selected Solana, and I'm sure like you can select the L2 is like you need to look far in the future and think what do you want to build and what will empower this, because you can chase the narrative and either you're super fast and you always manage to grab it while it's still the narrative, but most likely by the time that you finish building, the narrative is gone to the next thing. Or you can just use the narrative whenever it passed by, and then you keep building towards that vision. I think that's probably the better way to do it. So I would be wary of like incentives, any like kind of points that tries to attract. You have to be very careful because that will probably eventually stop. And unless like you see that like it's good because it's just going to bootstrap, and that's good. Like bootstrapping is good, but it needs to like remain when finally it stops and the user are still there and so on. So I kind of have big hope for Base because there's a very, very deep integration. So even if there's no more incentives, like I think it will continue to succeed. Same with Solana. A little bit dubious with Sui and Aptos, but that's just an opinion. Like other people have different data point, and I'm just saying like that's how I would make a decision. But otherwise, like the shorter partners, I mean, pretty much like if that works today, you partner and then you move forward.
You said you have to look into the future, so let's spend the last few minutes looking into the future. 5 years from now, how does that look like? Like is it all abstracted away? Like, do people care what stablecoin they hold on what network? Like, what does 5 year down the line look like? And I would like to hear everyone's perspective on that.
I think that we'll see pretty much everything abstracted away apart from like wallets. So potentially even like more centralized services, or like non-custodial wallets, giving users like much easier options, and these options on yield being managed by like kind of like mini funds. Yeah, maybe by like on-chain agents, maybe by like strategists. I think that like vaults haven't seen like a huge amount of traction yet, or they should see a lot more traction in the next few years. So I think most people are going to manage assets through vaults in the future.
Through votes?
Vaults.
Like
a vault. Like a Yearn vault, or something similar to that.
Depends. I think those are kind of taking ideas that are currently being implemented in yield farming strategies. And in general, we really have to look at what people are doing today, which is they get a Wise card, they get a Revolut, they get a Robinhood, they get a PayPal, they get a Venmo, and the integrator, the bank that's providing the wallet or the bank account, it's probably a stablecoin. For you guys, if you think about yourselves as a platform, you've integrated the maker bank, and XDAI is the token, but it's more analogous to USD. So most people just treat it as USD. And I think users, whenever they're using a protocol, they're going to log in, they're going to have money somewhere on their Venmo, on their Dymo, or MetaMask. They're going to move it around, they're going to pay for things. But it's going to be abstracted away, but it's just going to be treated like a bank account. And people can have a bank account if they want, or they can hold it on some wallet service. That's
what I think, like, for example, with Revolut, it would just be a vault or a product on Revolut that has yield-bearing stablecoins as like an option, similar to like an ETF, right?
Yeah, I think that could work. It's just I'm having a hard time finding like my parents, my friends who use wallets that they'll trust something like that. And then you have, we already had the first stage of that. So probably we'll have some providers that will do it. Like I remember Y Combinator had quite a few stablecoin companies savings that would use Luna. I mean, yeah.
Just put my 5 million of seed into Luna, right, and chill.
Yeah. Which is insane.
I think we're gonna have a mixed world. I think we're gonna have some users that are gonna be apps where everything is abstracted away, and then you're gonna have some other users that actually care about decentralization and censorship resistance, and they're gonna be using either self-hosted clients or UIs that are actually censorship resistant, and we're gonna have both.
Yeah, it's kind of like here, like you guys might use Visa or use Grab Pay or Line Pay. Like you can use your card or you can pay with the app. So it's gonna, I mean, it's up to the end user and the connections that we can create in the next 5 years.
That's a good point. Like which app would our mother use eventually, and then that's more likely to be Revolut style, where they don't need to worry. They don't even need to care about decentralization. I think the only piece that we really need to bring is the ability to leave that system, the ability to wire out your money out of the system. And as long as this is maintained, it can be 100% a centralized service. I think Telegram bots are getting there. Like centralized exchange have always been super centralizized, but they allow you to withdraw anywhere that you want. It's starting to be
Sometimes.
Yeah, it's starting to be. I mean, it's been eroded throughout time. Now travel rule is eroding this, but yeah, that might become a gray area where like it's not even perfect, because if we deal with centralized service, that sometime is always going to be real, especially for real crypto user. For us, we might need to remain way more decentralized. But if we want to bring the mass usage, they don't necessarily need to care, and they won't be blocked necessarily.
Yeah, like the Bonkapot guys on Solana are doing amazing work with CK to be able to execute transactions that the user wants, while still maintaining some level of security. Because at the end of the day, if you built it wrong, it's just a honeypot of everyone's money trading.
As far as I know, that's like an added feature after they're moving away from a centralized custody into, okay, let's try to decentralize this user experience.
I think passkey wallets are the future of non-custodial wallets.
I think it's great, but we got to really look at if the passkeys is the final way or if it's just like a credit card number. But then right now it's very cloudy in terms of what wallets can integrate it, which node can you use. There's too many question marks around that to be able to say, like, Aragon had it right a few years ago until they went CK crazy, and then they stopped kind of innovating in that space. But being able to approve a passkey to do something without just taking all your money. Like, I know in Europe they do the tap to pay, but it's like you can only do $50 a day, something like that.
Yeah. So on the note of the future is uncertain, I would like to thank our panelists and thank everyone in the audience for being here today. It's a wrap.
Thank you.
Thank you.